on the vlog again. Just can't wait to do a vlog again. The life I love is making vlogs for my friends, and I can't wait to do a vlog again. Doing a vlog again. Going places that I've never been. Seeing things that I may never see again. And I can't wait to do a vlog again.
Today's adventure brings us to the Kosciusko County Museum. Let's go inside and take a look.
So welcome to the old Kosciusko County Jail. The building was built in 1870. It was built in the castellated Gothic architectural style out of Indiana limestone. Was, at the time it was constructed, considered to be a state-of-the-art facility. Now, in spite of that, history tells us there were quite a number of escapes from this facility early on, so many so that by 1885 our county commissioners appropriated an additional $15,000 to be spent on the building to try to stiffen up security. History also tells us that really didn't seem to affect things much, and the escapes continued well up into the 1930s. As Connie started to tell you, in keeping with the laws of the day, it was the law in 1870 that in Indiana the sheriff had to reside in the same building as the jail. So the building is divided into two sections. You have the jail portion, and you have the residence section where the sheriff and his family would have resided. Again, this was our county jail all the way up till 1982. The last sheriff to live here with his family was Sheriff Dave Andrews, who they lived here until 1974. So they were the last family to live here. Now, it was also kind of customary in those days. It wasn't necessarily the law, but it was sort of customary that the sheriff's wife would serve as the jail matron. I made her kind of like the dorm mom. She'd be responsible for passing out the clean linens and tending anybody's boo-boos, but most importantly, she was responsible for preparing all of the meals for the prisoners. Now, it's interesting, back when the jail was first opened, the jail matron was allowed a very generous stipend of, I believe it was 15 cents a meal for every meal that she cooked for the inmates. Interestingly enough, if the jail was filled to capacity, that price actually dropped to 10 cents a meal. Don't ask me why. You'd think she'd get paid more the more she cooked, but for some reason it was the exact opposite. This room we're standing in currently was added on in 1937. This was added on as a booking room and radio room. The area immediately to our north here was added on at that time as a garage. Later on in the 1960s, they built a new garage on the back of the building here, the area which today houses our genealogy library. And at that time, this area over here was converted into offices. So that pretty well covers the construction of the building. I will take you in here and get you started. The building is very strictly segregated. You had the section downstairs for the male prisoners. Cell block consisting of 5 cells. You had a cell block for the female prisoners and juvenile prisoners upstairs. So come on in and I'll get you started, tell you a little bit about the cell block here. If you want to go on in. This common area was known as the bullpen. This is where the prisoners not only would eat their meals, but this was also their recreation area. I mean, this was your entire world between these 4 walls. There was no exercise yard, there was no shower room. This was it. Of the 5 cells, the one you see here immediately to my right is the only one still in its original configuration. Originally, all of the cells had 4 bunks in them, just like this one. You have a toilet in one corner and a small lavatory in the opposite corner where you can wash your face and hands and just kind of take a sponge bath. That's pretty much it. Now, originally out here in this open area there was a large table and some benches bolted to the floor. Again, if the prisoners wanted to play cards, write letters, read books, whatever, this is where you would do it, in addition to eating your meals. Now, it's kind of interesting when you look at this building. For 1870, This is an amazing feat of engineering. If you look around in here in the cell block, everything you see is constructed out of riveted plate steel. Very obviously, this was a pre-engineered structure. It is our belief they actually built the cell block itself and then built the shell of the building around it. I mean, when you think about it, it's the only scenario that really makes sense. So what you actually have is a building within a building. This cell block sits on 4 feet of solid rock. They didn't want anybody tunneling out of here. They seem to have given a great deal of thought to engineering this so that they tried to minimize the amount of actual face-to-face contact that the inmates had to have with the prison population. For instance, as you travel through the cell block, you'll see a number of these boxes like this one right here. What this was, if the jailer or the sheriff had to go in here to do something with the inmates, they would order all of the prisoners on this side into their cells, have them close their doors. They could then lock and unlock the cells from out here before they actually went in there, so they didn't have to actually have face-to-face contact. Another interesting feature, around the doors, all of these bars were double barred like this, which I'm sure they rotated much easier back when they were originally built. That was so if anybody got their hands on a hacksaw, tried to saw their way out, the bars would simply sit there and rotate. You couldn't get enough traction on them. Personally, I look at this, anybody can saw their way out of this with a hacksaw blade is an overachiever in my book, but nevertheless.
So I guess if you got 25, 30 years, you got nothing but time on your hands, you can keep on trying.
Well, and nobody stayed that long in here. Basically, you might have somebody do 6 months in here, would be a long sentence in the county jail. Anything more than that, they would be sent to the Department of Corrections with the state, either to Pendleton or Michigan City, to one of the other prisons to do long terms. So most of these people were just in jail a few days, maybe a week, or if they were pending trial. Now, that's interesting because people think, small town, chicken thieves, that kind of stuff. One point in time in 1921, there were actually 8 accused murderers all jailed in this building all at the same time. So, no, there were some pretty hardcore characters came through these doors. Again, to minimize the amount of contact they had to have behind this flag, there's a slot in the wall where they could pass their meals through to them so they could feed them from outside without ever having to come into the cell block. Also, if you look carefully, this passageway right here, and you can see it outside the bars here, it was known as the catwalk. This completely encircled this cell block. It is exactly the same on the second floor. That allowed the sheriff or his deputies to walk all the way around. They could look into each one of the individual cells and see what the inmates were up to, again, without ever actually having to come into contact with them. So it's really well thought out when you look at it. Now, as you travel through the museum today, you'll notice that our main attention this summer is on our D-Day display, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. All of the stories that you see posted here, all of the pictures, all of the memorabilia, the uniforms, are all from local Kosciusko County veterans. These are all contributed from local families. In fact, the young man sitting in the cockpit of that Corsair fighter plane right there was my dad. So it was a war that very much touched everyone. It wasn't something that affected your cousins or your neighbors or the guy down the street. I mean, every family in this country was touched by that war in one way or another. The young man in the picture over here, Sam Lohman, was a P-47 Thunderbolt pilot. He was killed over France in 1944. The flag you see displayed here today was flown over the United States Capitol building in his honor. So
there's a book by Ernie Pyle right here. For you guys who have been following our channel, we went to the Ernie Pyle Childhood Home and Museum. Ernie did a lot for during D-Day and war in general, but just describing what the men and women were going through, not at home, not just at home, but on the battlefield as well. Beautiful pea coat.
This room contains items from the Civil War, Spanish-American War, the two World Wars, Vietnam, and Desert Storm.
As you can see, the Civil War era right there. And over here you have World War I and World War II. Jacob, I think I found your hat.
This cell has a solid steel door and was the trunk tank. It now houses fine collection of early tools.
Let's go inside and take a look, and we'll see some of these early tools. Wow. Boy, these are some early tools.
Ever want cream for your coffee? You'd have to use one of these back then to separate your cream from your milk.
Now the suit that you see on your left is from an unknown World War II Army Air Force Sergeant First Class Engineer Specialist. Floyd G. Robbins, Signalman, 3rd Class. He's 19. He was wounded in action on February 1st and has been awarded the Purple Heart. Here's a picture. Here's a Marine dress coat for a captain.
Very spiffy.
Check out that really pretty plate. Has the city of Warsaw, 1875 to 2000. Very pretty.
Now, before the elevator shaft was installed in 1989, guards could walk through entirely around the outside of the cells on the first floor. This is called the catwalk and enabled guards to keep an eye on prisoners without entering the bullpen. It was also used by visitors to talk to inmates. The catwalk features area athletics.
As we see some of the pictures down here, we've seen some of the uniforms and trophies, jackets. It's really nice museum. If you guys get a chance to check it out, I would highly recommend it.
Horse trough stood in front of the second courthouse in the 1860s. Surveyor's wheel. As it ran along the ground, the clicks would indicate a rod. 1880s. This
is the solidary cell. It had changed little since it was first used, and the jail was built in 1871. Let's go inside this dark cell and take a look. And that's it. You had your little bed right there, and so your toilet was probably right here, and that was about it. And you was in this room.
The Warner School, 1840, was restored by the retired teachers of Kosciusko County.
And here are some of the books.
This is the juvenile section. This section has slightly smaller bunks and housed 8 juveniles, and the small bullpen area required schoolwork was done. Even in jail, juveniles were expected to do their lessons. One former jailer related the story of a young female runaway who spent the entire school year in jail. The home life was not good, and authorities did not want to return her to home. She stayed here, went to school across the street, came back to the jail, helped the matron, and did her homework each evening. The 2 juvenile cells have been converted into one-room schoolhouse and ye old post office.
And we just took a look at the schoolhouse, and now we're taking a look at the post office. The Pound Store, U.S. Post Office, 1838, as it looked in 1910.
In the women's section, there are 3 cells in the women's section, each with 4 bunks. The first cell contains a small bunk for children. Before the days of welfare departments, children's services, etc., when a woman came to jail, usually just for overnight or minor offenses, the children came too and stayed with the mother using the small bunk in their bed. Also on display are old washing machines, and one of the oldest is the first rocking washing machine sold in Kosciusko County to the Chapman family.
And that right there would be the washing machine.
The sheriff's living quarters consist of 8 rooms on 3 floors. You pass through 2 steel doors into the hallway. These doors were to prevent prisoners' entry into the living quarters if they escaped the jail cells.
This would be the bathroom. Now there is a sky view of what Warsaw looked like in about 1952. Check out all these cool patches. You know me, I'm a sucker for a patch. This whole room's full of patches and flags and medals and pens and binoculars.
Yes. Here you're entering the pantry. The large cabinets were used to hold food and other supplies necessary for the prisoners.
Some big cabinets.
This would be the kitchen, which was used by the sheriff's wife to cook not only family meals, but meals for the prisoners too. Old Indiana law required a sheriff to reside in the jail building with his wife as matron and cook for the prisoners. She was separately paid 15 cents per meal for the inmates when there were only a few, and 7 cents per meal when there was a full house. At one time she was paid a salary of $900 a year. Our county is named after Thaddeus Kosciusko, who was from Poland, and our county seat is named after the capital of Poland, Warsaw. On learning of the American Revolution, Thaddeus Kosciusko, sympathetically to the American cause, sailed for America in June 1776, along with other foreign officers. On August 30th, 1776, Kosciusko was submitted an application to the United States Congress, and the next day he was assigned to the United States War Department. Kosciusko took part in the fighting as a colonel in the Continental Army, an accomplished military architect. He also built state-of-the-art fortifications, perhaps most notable was at West Point, New York. In 1783, in recognition of his services, the Continental Congress promoted him to brigadier general. In 1798, before Kosciusko had left the United States for France, he had collected his back pay, written out a will, and entrusted it to Thomas Jefferson as executor. In the will, Kosciusko left his American estate to be sold to buy the freedom of black slaves, including Jefferson's own, and to educate them for independent life and work. Unfortunately, none of the money earmarked for the manumissions and education of African Americans in the United States was ever used for that purpose due to a dispute over the will.
So he didn't even get what he wanted after all.
No, poor man.
There's a beautiful grandfather clock. See some old instruments in here. It's a beautiful lamp. Beautiful quilts. See all the matchbooks? We got another one right here. As we're heading up to the third level, take a look at that. That is a beautiful painting. Now this wheelchair is from the old county home, now the site of Miller's Mary Manor. These are famous writers. As you can see, there's James Whitcomb Riley. We've been to his grave before. If you watch our vlogs, you might remember that one. There's some awards. Now, the jail was listed a National Register of Historic Places in 1978. The jail closed and building leased to the County Historical Society for the first county museum in 1982. County jails were first established in 1792 under laws of the Northwestern Territory. They continued under laws of the Indiana Territory and state constitutions of 1816 and 1851. Well, thank you so much for coming on this vlog with us. I hope you had a great time visiting the old jail and seeing everything that they had to offer.
You can join us on all of our social media websites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at thetopvlogers. Also, if you'd like to help us reach the top, you could do so by going to www.patreon.com/thetopvlogers. Without your help and support, these vlogs would be almost impossible to do. There will be a link in the description below.
And if you are new here, don't forget you can hit that subscribe button, take it one step further, and ring the notification bell to keep you up to date on all the future adventures that we will be going on our channel. We'll see you tomorrow. Top Vloggers, out.